What is good, y'all? What is good? Hope you guys are doing absolutely amazing today. Wanted to go ahead and do a little, market update, right? We didn't do one yesterday, so obviously we do want to do at least three a week. That is the goal. So we've already done two, and welcome to our third. So yeah, really since we last, hopped in, we'll just update kind of like those ideas. And honestly, guys, I don't really have much going forward this week because we already killed it. So I don't really have too much to go over. But we will see if we can, take advantage of some potential plays that we've already been in, right? So today we called out AUD USD sells once again, right? If you guys remember, we just did a video a little bit back talking about this setup that we talked about here, right? Which is like about a 1 to 2.5 R, right? And then now we're pretty much in a trade right now once again on AUD USD in a much higher level. But we are now up 1 to 3. Let's go. And obviously, we also had NASDAQ, right, which was a nice little 1 to 5. I don't know if I dropped a video on that. I'm pretty sure I did. Yeah, I definitely did. I definitely did. So, yeah, price ended up, the rest of that position ended up getting stopped at break even, but this time we took partials at 1 to 4, which was blessed instead of like taking them at 1 to 2, which is normally what we do. Because I was really anticipating us to come for these lows. But yeah, so that was that for NASDAQ, managed to catch a good chunk there. And then AUD is what we're looking for now to move forward, right? Because, pretty much what we've been seeing, I feel like, with AUD is we've really had in the lead up to NFP price just absolutely rocketing, right? We could see the beginning of the week is all the way down here, right? So, if the beginning of the week is here, right, we've really been moving in one direction that whole time, right? And like, whenever we see NFP week, a lot of the time, since NFP week falls on the last day, the last day of it all ends up being Friday, right? Which ends up being the actual NFP news event. Sometimes we can see price create those bigger time frame reversals, right? Like actually reverse what's happening for the majority of the week, which in this case was buys, right? So there's a chance NFP week can help us, with this trade that we've actually, taken, right? So we ended up taking a type 3 setup on AUD USD, right? Because we could see that it was taking a point of external liquidity, which was this high over here, right? We talked about this high being a very significant high in the beginning of the week. We were looking to see it respected, which is why we took trades in here, but I didn't really see any other setups until we actually swept this high, right? So again, that's why it's really important to, look at lower time frame price action and see like if it can really give you a reasonable entry or not, which I don't really feel like a lot of this really gave us, right? I think that's one of the most important things that again will allow you guys to just take, better setups, take less losses is really getting really good at looking at that lower time frame and, evaluating and being like, can this be a good, zone to play or not, right? And I just think that the only part where we really started to see it happen was like here, right? For the actual sales, where we really started to get that order flow down very nicely, right? So yeah, so really what I saw was we had this beautiful 30-minute up candle, right? We can see here that, we target that specific high, right? So if we actually look, I'm gonna go ahead and just delete the circle here. Right, if we look, we can go ahead and see we just barely came above that zone there, right? Looks like this is a little too high. This should be a little bit lower. Right. Right there. We just barely came above that high, right? And we targeted that with like a really nice candle, right? So just barely taking out that high, right? We end up having like a lower time frame sweep here as well. We can see here on the 3 minute we have like this one candle coming up and sweeping. So that was kind of like my first sign of manipulation for a potential type 3 setup. And then as we started to come down, we had a trap candle, which for me, again, that's what I look for another point of manipulation, right? So we had 2 points of manipulation. We had like this potential push to the upside. I would say like basically this push up here was what I was really looking at. Like, okay, this really looks like potential manipulation, right? Like, and if we really look to like at the timing of this as well, we could see 8:30 is where, right? 8:30 is right here, right? So the news event happened right here, right, pretty much following the news event, we end up having this sweep, right? Price sells off, and then we were looking for that retracement on the lower time frame to then go ahead and push to the downside. So that's exactly why it was a type 3 setup. We saw the institutional candle on the bigger time frame. During the down candle, that's when we're starting to go ahead and move in and start to get aggressive on the pair, right? So yeah, it was a really, really clean setup. And so since we did create an institutional candle, everything like that, in the 30-minute time frame and stuff. Since we did even have like, bigger time frames starting to create things like this trap candle, right? I think there's a good sign that we could potentially see this sell off. Even if we look at the daily here, Obviously we could see that price is like more just a wick that takes out the high, but we can see here we have a trap candle that appears right before we sweep. I mean, maybe this can end up being an institutional up candle, right? If this next candle actually comes bearish, that would look really clean for a potential bigger time frame distribution to really play out, right? So fingers crossed. All right, fingers crossed. But we did manage to catch a really ideal zone, so that's really good. And again, guys, like what I really have said and talked about is obviously you guys can see I did put stops to entry here. When we get closer to the news event, honestly, I might take this off, right? Because when we really look at it, I mean, we secured profits at 1 to 2. Some of you might have secured profits at 1 to 3. If you take half of your position out here and price comes back and hits stop, well, guess what? We're still going to be in profit overall for the trade. So it can be worth it because since NFP allows that, it has a huge amount of volatility, right? Since NFP really also can widen spreads and stuff like that. This price action could happen where we do end up getting a retest back into that area. So for me personally, I'd rather just not worry about it, right? If price does break the high, then I'm out, right? If so, y'all got me, and then maybe I'll see if I can catch something there or not, right? Or maybe I just don't because we've already had a really great week. So I'm kind of chilling as a whole to go into this week. I really just want to see if this can really position us for NFP the day before, because very often, guys, like I said, I've seen NFP create the high the day before, and then Friday just follows through on that high that's already been created. So that's going to be the idea that I'm going to be, potentially gunning for. Especially since my idea from the beginning of the week was really starting to see that dollar buy. And dollar came right into our zone, swept the previous low from the beginning of the week, and now we're starting to see price trade away. I mean, personally, I think it was really difficult to be inside of this area, right? And that's the area that we're in. So since it's really hard to be in here, I'm pretty confident we can hold and potentially come for these highs, right? Like I said, like maybe even come for the imbalances that we've been talking about since the beginning of the week. So hopefully we can come with a post NFP update that this held and we end up continuing. Right, fingers crossed. But that is what it's looking like right now, right? I think we might continue to boom for the rest of the day, right? Maybe NFP just creates a pullback and then we can see that push to the upside. Fingers crossed. But uh but yeah, guys, honestly, truthfully, guys, that's it. Like that's really all I'm gonna go in with you guys today. Very short lesson, right? Honestly, like I think that this AUDUSD is a pretty straightforward idea. Maybe one thing we can talk about is like why not take the price action in here, right? Which is basically like I think this is the last real like significant high we could say it really would look like an entry. I don't think anything else here we really see like anything clean. And I think the main thing that we can see here is like when we go to the 15, we could see that this is a wick, right? Like on every time frame, basically, right? I think only the 5 minute has a good candle here, right? Which would have been nice, maybe even to play off of here. You could have still secured some profit on that. But, on the 15, right? That whole zone is a wick. On the 30, right? That whole zone is a wick. On the 1 hour, that whole zone is a wick, right? So like there's no real like institutional candles that are being created inside of here. So because of that, that would have been a very easy sign to like, hey, we're probably going to end up getting another push to the upside sweep, right? Whether you think it's going to come here and sweep or whether you think it can even take the external liquidity, right? In our case, we managed to, stay patient enough, right? We didn't take any trade in here, right? And, price just ended up booming. So yeah, like I think it's just very difficult to position where we did, guys. So personally, guys, I think this is just gonna fall off a cliff. So that's my update on AUD y'all. Sorry, I don't really got anything else to say. We've had a great week. We'll just go ahead and wrap this up, guys. Take in we are at minimum now. What we've secured for this week is a 15R in the group chat, right? 15 risk to reward this week. So, I'm gonna pat myself on the back and I'm gonna go out on the weekend and have a good time. But yeah, guys, much love, much appreciation, for all you guys for tuning in. And yeah, we'll be back at it next week, continuing to run it up even stronger. All right. Higher highs and higher highs, guys. Much love. Peace out. See you on the next one.